Welcome into Seahawks Today, powered by Chat Sports. Tyler Jones here with you. Appreciate you joining us. Coming up on today's show, we will have some updates for you on Drew Lock, the Seahawks rookies, as well as some NFL schedule leaks involving the Seahawks. All that and more on today's show, plus also some news on KJ Wright. But let's go ahead and get started right off the jump from Drew Lock. Drew Lock comes in competing for the Seahawks quarterback job alongside Geno Smith. And, of course, Locke came to Seattle as a part of the Russell Wilson trade. And there was an anonymous executive that spoke about Locke to The Athletic this week. Now, I'll say this much. We have a couple of these anonymous executive quotes that I want to get to. I don't like anonymous sources as much as the next guy, but if people are talking, we're listening. So, whatever you may think of that, it's still newsworthy nonetheless. Here is what one executive had to say about the Seahawks moving forward with Drew Lock. Do I think Drew Lock is the answer? No. Did Seattle do what they needed to do to cover themselves for the loss of Russell Wilson? Does any team ever do enough to cover itself for the loss of a Tier 1 quarterback? When you get a quarterback like that, you're expecting 10 wins when he walks in the building. So, that was the quote on Drew Lock, and I got to tell you, hearing those words, he's absolutely right on this, that this is a situation that you're looking at the Seahawks. There was no perfect solution for when you moved on from Russell Wilson. And although I'm not a big fan of Drew Lock, they had to do something of some sorts here, and that gets to our weigh-in. Our first question of the day here. It'll be our pinned comment here on Seahawks Today. Do you think Drew Lock can win 10 games or more? You hear the idea of a Tier 1 quarterback like Russell Wilson, who there's an expectation of winning 10 games or more. And what he was able to do throughout most of his time in Seattle was consistently get that team to the playoffs. Now you start a new chapter potentially with Drew Lock as your starter. Can he do the production that Russell Wilson did? I don't think so. Go ahead and tell us in the comments section. Type Y for yes, type N for no if you think Drew Lock is capable of being that tier 1 caliber quarterback that could get 10 wins or more for the Seahawks. Now, coming up in just a moment, we'll have an update on the Seahawks rookies, but I got a few more things for you on Drew Lock of what the executive said to The Athletic here. Here's more of that on the Seahawks being all in on Drew Lock. Their fascination with Drew Lock feels like a contrarian. Hey, we are going to win running the ball, and our evaluation of Drew Lock was right. Only a Super Bowl winning coach who has tenure and is feeling secure can do that. This will either be the greatest I told you so, or it could be, hey, you know what? I gave it a great run, and no one's going to remember this part when it's said and done anyway. Now, I have followed Drew Lock closely when he was at the University of Missouri to his time in the Denver Broncos. And what I think Pete Carroll and John Schneider are falling into is what a lot of people have fallen into with Drew Lock dating back to his time at Mizzou, is that those flashes in the pan. He's had those few moments where it looked like, okay, this guy could be a legit quarterback in the National Football League, but there's too much inconsistency there. Too many bad days of my liking from Drew Lock to be convinced that he's worthy of being a starting quarterback in the National Football League. But the Seahawks see something. We heard from Pete Carroll just a few days ago say that he thinks Drew Lock would have been the best quarterback in this draft class. So we'll keep an eye on that situation. But nonetheless, the Seahawks look like that they're pushing forward with Drew Lock. Now, more from what the Athletic had from this anonymous executive weighing in on the Seahawks rookies, Charles Cross and Kenneth Walker III. Let's go ahead and get you those quotes now. Saying, I loved the tackle Seattle got, that's Charles Cross, and have no problem with the running back in the second round, Kenneth Walker III. I'm much bigger on not paying a running back a large second contract because they peak early. I don't mind them taking one in the second round at all. And, I look at Cross and Walker, and these guys are going to be cornerstones of this Seahawks franchise. I think when we talk about this new era of Seahawks football, after Russell Wilson, obviously you'll look at DK Metcalf, but the pieces that built the foundation for what's going forward with this franchise, you'll look directly at Charles Cross and Kenneth Walker as those key pieces that I think you're going to be pretty happy with what you see with these guys for a very long time, for years to come. More Seahawks Today coming up in just a moment, but before we do, we want to tell you about our friends at BetUS. They are the absolute best when it comes to sports betting, and if you want to bet on the NBA playoffs, or if you want to put some futures bets on the NFL season, maybe you're a baseball guy, I don't know. They got you covered on everything at BetUS. Chatsports.com/bet. You'll have a 125% deposit bonus when you use the promo code Seahawks125. Maybe you want to place a bet on the Seattle Mariners as well with their MLB season going on right now. They seem to be doing okay at this point. Now, let's go ahead and get you those title odds, by the way. And, man, these NBA playoffs have been phenomenal. I have been watching almost every night. The Warriors, the odds-on favorites right now at plus 165. Phoenix at 325. They had a nice win over Dallas. Some folks in the office here weren't a little pleased with that one. Boston at 375, Miami at plus 700, and the Bucks at 750. I like the value on the Bucks, honestly, at this point. I think that they could still turn it around as the defending champions, and they got the best player in the world in Giannis Antetokounmpo. I got that right. Hey. Anyways, BetUS. Check them out. Chatsports.com/bet. Promo code Seahawks125. Now let's get you up to speed on KJ Wright. Earlier in the week on the show, we told you how KJ Wright made it clear he wants to come back to the Seattle Seahawks after the 10 seasons he spent there. Well, now we have comments from John Schneider as he spoke to Seattle Sports 710 that he and Carroll actually both met with KJ Wright this offseason. Schneider says they'd like to figure out a non-playing role for Wright in Seattle, and Wright spent last season, of course, with the Las Vegas Raiders. And there's no doubt where KJ Wright wants to be, that he wants to be with the Seattle Seahawks. But when you look at this regime and where they're headed from here, I don't know if there's a fit for KJ Wright for the right price tag, no pun intended there, on him playing with this Seahawks team necessarily. With the youth movement and their focus, KJ would be a great locker room guy, but I don't think the Seahawks necessarily want to roll with KJ Wright in a value of some sorts. I mean, you look at his numbers last year. They were okay, not great. You know, he was in a backup role with Vegas, didn't have any sacks. He had 2 tackles for loss, no forced fumbles or fumble recoveries. I like KJ Wright. He means a lot to the Seattle Seahawks, but I think that they're on to something of this non-football role of getting him on the coaching staff or somewhere in that way. I think they're on to something there. I think that's a lot more likely than we see KJ in a Seahawks uniform anytime soon. So, nonetheless, he wants to be there, but I don't think it's going to be on the field. We'll see. Now, while we're on the topic of KJ Wright, let's have you weigh in the comments section. What's your favorite KJ Wright memory? He had 10 great years in Seattle. And I want to know from you guys, what was your favorite of all of them? Tell us in the comments section. You're going to get an ad break. Take advantage of it. Tell us in the comments what your favorite KJ Wright memory was from the last 10 years. Now, before we go, a quick Seahawks schedule update for you. The leaks are out. Now, before we get to these leaks, I got to tell you, I want to make one thing very clear. Do not at me about these leaks, folks. We are making it very clear. These are not confirmed. They're not official until the Seahawks announce them on Thursday night. So don't be in my mentions if these are wrong, whatever. Don't shoot the messenger. We're just putting them out there. We'll have those for you in just a second. But before we do, I want to make sure you are subscribed to Seahawks Today. We are covering the Seahawks like no one else on the internet is. Make sure and subscribe to the channel for daily Seahawk videos right in your inbox. YouTube.com/SeahawksTV. That's YouTube.com/SeahawksTV. Make sure those notifications are on, please. All right, so the Seahawks schedule. The only game that we know officially at this point is that they will take on the Buccaneers in Germany. It's going to be an early kickoff, 6:30 in the morning Pacific time in Munich on November 13th. Now, that game going to be fun. We know Tom Brady, the very rich Fox Sports broadcaster will be involved in that game. That'll be fun to see them make that trip, but nonetheless getting up early for it. But here are the leaks as well of the 3 home opponents that we, I guess, kind of know at this point. Again, not confirmed, okay? Don't kill me on that one, folks. Week 12 against the Falcons. Week 14 against Carolina. Week 18 against the Los Angeles Rams. And the way that they do these schedules now, the final week of the season, you play a divisional opponent. So that adds up that they would play the Rams there. But you're looking at 3 home leagues essentially there with Atlanta Week 12, Carolina Week 14, and the Rams Week 18. Now, the rest of the opponents, we know who they are. We just don't know the dates yet on these others. The Cardinals, Rams, and 49ers, of course, those are your divisional opponents. You'll play home and away. And then your home opponents, beyond the division, the Seahawks have 6 home games, including those 2 against Atlanta and Carolina, like we mentioned. The Denver Broncos, when Russell Wilson comes back. The Las Vegas Raiders, and then the 2 New York teams, the New York Giants and the New York Jets. The away opponents for the Seahawks include the Detroit Lions, Jared Goff coming back to Seattle, a place that he's been many times with the Rams. The Kansas City Chiefs, anytime Patrick Mahomes takes the field, that's always a lot of fun. The Los Angeles Chargers, and then the New Orleans Saints. So I want to know from you guys, what game are you most excited about when you look at these opponents? And on Thursday, we're going to tell you what these dates are. Once they're released, we'll break those down. But as of right now, of just the opponents, what are you most excited about when you look at these opponents the Seahawks are facing in 2022? Let us know in the comments section what game you are most excited about this season. For me, it's the obvious one. Russell Wilson returning to Seattle. Now, I understand if you don't have a whole lot of promise about this season, if you aren't excited in a rebuilding year for Seattle. But I think everyone's going to have their eye on Russell Wilson's return to Seattle, much like what we saw last year with Tom Brady coming back to New England. It won't be as big as that, but nonetheless, I would be shocked if this isn't a primetime game on Monday Night Football or Sunday Night Football. It's going to be a big deal when Russell returns to Seattle, and I think that you're going to see this Seahawks team play with a bit of an edge, a chip on their shoulder of some sorts when that game comes around. So there you have it. That is the latest here on Seahawks Today. Appreciate you joining us as always. Give me a follow on Twitter at Tyler Jones Live. Don't at me, though, if we're wrong about the schedule. You can only tweet me if I'm right. Just kidding. Thanks for joining us here. We'll see you next time.